Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Boropolis podcast. As always, I am joined with Nathan, and on today's episode, we will be discussing yet another frantic 3-3 draw away at Plymouth Argyle. Nathan, what is it with Middlesbrough going to Plymouth Argyle, the weather being absolutely disgusting, and just all hell breaking loose? We said a few weeks ago on the podcast that last season's games against Leeds were basketball matches. Perhaps this is the new basketball match, because it just, especially at Plymouth, just like last season, a load of crap defending, some pretty decent goals, and overall, you probably come away with it thinking, what have we learned from that? And have we actually gained anything from it? And we're about to try and explore the answers to those questions. Obviously, we're close to Christmas now, so before we get into the football, Nathan, how are you getting into the festivities? I don't even know, actually. This isn't just for the podcast purposes. Are you finished work? What's your schedule looking like over the next week or so? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm not so bad, Chris. I'm not finished work. I'm there tomorrow and Christmas Eve. But after that, I'm off till the 30th, which isn't so bad. Get a squeeze in the Boxing Day game and the Burnley game as well. So that'll be nice. But yeah, other than that, looking forward to being finished for Christmas. But yeah, a day off yesterday and to watch just chaos unfold for the second season running. And do you want to know what? I think going off the game and sort of reflecting on last season's game down there as well, I think this podcast will have a lot of similar themes in Boro's defending and conceding poor goals from our perspective, scoring a couple of good goals from our perspective, and a final case of being disappointed in the end that you don't perform to your full potential. Because watching the game yesterday, if we had, it's 3 points and it's an easy 3 points as well. But you come away with it, and going down three times in the game, you get a point. It's just best you get out of there.
Yeah. And I mean, look, moving on to the game, it's going to be difficult kind of recalling everything in sort of any kind of order. And you know what? This week, Nathan, because of that much going on, it's usually, I must say, for anyone that listens, you're probably able to tell, to be honest, Nathan's usually the really organised one that's got notes set out. He knows exactly kind of in what order, which players have crossed the ball, all that. And probably as a podcast host, that should be exactly what I do. But sometimes I'm just too emotional and basically just go into these podcasts off the back of, well, this is how I remember it, and that's what I'm going with. But yeah, I mean, there was 6 goals yesterday, and God knows how many other things going on. So we're going to recall it. I mean, just in terms of what you said there, getting a point and getting out of there, we have seen, this is the only kind of point of view in which you touched on, in fairness, last podcast, the only kind of small positive that I'm taking out of this yesterday, the result and the fact that we've ultimately gone to the bottom of the league and dropped points. Quite a few other teams in and around our position in the league table have done the same, if not worse. And also the fact that we've shown enough fight to come from behind 3 times. I think they're probably really, on a whole, the two things you've got to look at and think, right, okay, there is some positives. There is a very, very slim silver lining.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it takes a lot of battling back and the ability to bounce back to pull yourself back into a game 3 times. Like, that can't be understated as a characteristic of this squad. It was down and out 3 times in the game and pulled themselves back into it, had chances to go ahead. But in certain instances when the game was level, but was unable to take our chances. A little bit of a reversion back to the early months of the season where we weren't taking gilt edge chances really. We saw a couple of those yesterday, which we'll get into, but Look, I thought that we started the game pretty okay, really, in the first 10, 15 minutes. There was an instance where we got Dorkin down the right hand side, and instead of firing across the face of goal or firing a shot at goal, he decides to cut it back. And I think that was a chance missed early on in the game. But then really from minute 15 onwards, we were shambolic. Couldn't get a hold of the ball at all. Really, defensively, all over the shop. Looked shaky every time we were attacked. And if I'm totally honest, Plymouth were value for their lead going into the break. And really, we were lucky to be going in only 1-0 down.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, really. As you say, I don't think we were bad starting the game. I don't think we were excellent by any stretch. And I think just touching on Ben Doak, obviously we'll get into it. There was a couple of those yesterday where I think almost the assists earlier on in the season, I don't know if that's in his mind a little bit when he gets into these kind of positions in the final third, where now he's consciously thinking, right, I need to pick someone out here, and probably not doing things off the cuff as much as perhaps what he was potentially. Sometimes he'll get into a position, and it's something that's just kind of crept into his game almost over the last few weeks. Not being too harsh, we've all seen that Ben Doak's been brilliant for Middlesbrough this season for the most part. But yeah, over the last few weeks, he'll kind of, stop and think, and then perhaps his cross is cut out, or he doesn't quite get enough on his cross, or he just, makes the wrong decision. And he's still very young. Like I said in the last podcast, it's not a complete slight on Ben Doak at all. But I think over the last few weeks, especially, whether it's heightened attention on him, whether it's just a slight, and this feels harsh, me saying this, a slight dip in form, which is totally understandable for a player at the stage of his career that he's in. It's a very much a possibility. But yeah, look, I'm not pinning this on Ben Doak at all. It's just he had a few of those opportunities yesterday, but then also was involved in the first equaliser. So, swings and roundabouts with that, I guess. Let's get on to the first goal then, Nathan. To be honest, a theme of the afternoon, George Edmondson has been an absolute find and a half. He's been sensational. There's reports this week that Middlesbrough are now looking to basically get a deal for him wrapped up in January before kind of all of the sharks begin to circle and think, well, if we can offer him a pre-contract here, or if we can perhaps go to Ipswich directly and say, well, we'll pay you X amount if you cut his loan short at Middlesbrough. He's been that good that it comes as no surprise that there's plenty of clubs showing interest, and we know that there's plenty of clubs in for George Edmondson, and rightfully so. Yesterday, a rare off day by his standards, looked a little bit all over the place. Just in terms of the goal, look, there's many people that you can look at in terms of the positioning, the downright confusion, the just lack of awareness of kind of what's going on around them. But ultimately, the goal comes from a corner that's put in. It comes out to El Hadj, I think his name is. He's kind of almost rolling the ball from one side to another, looking for the right pass, looking to see if he can slip one of his wingers or his fullbacks that have stayed wide. And it felt like that goes on for an eternity. You've got George Edmondson being the one which is going out and trying to press him on the edge of the box, which for starters shouldn't probably be happening. That's got to be a midfielder's job. I know kind of sometimes the ball ricochets and it's just whoever's closest, but that creates a problem in itself. You've then got the fact that perhaps he's drawn out. So Neto Borges thinks to himself that he should try and almost cover for Edmondson. Howson's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Dijksteel's tucked in. And ultimately, the first goal is just, well, it's as bad as any of the others, but it's Middlesbrough just fail from the resulting corner to just not reset properly and go back to almost like factory settings, training from like 25 years ago of the back four when we're out of possession. Everyone just has their rope attached to them and you just go back into like default settings. Middlesbrough don't manage to do that quick enough and they're punished, aren't they?
Yeah, that's literally how it is, Chris. 1-0 down, and yeah, you're thinking, well, that's not necessarily in the script for how we started the game. We started the game relatively okay, lost control, Plymouth got on top, and then yeah, just before the break as well, the cross comes into the box. Edmondson, as mentioned, didn't have his best game yesterday, and I think he's in two minds whether to head this ball or just clear it with his foot. Instead, makes a decision too late, heads the ball into the ground right in front of him. HYDE takes it off him, probably about 12 yards out, slips in Bundu on the right hand side, and Bryn makes a really, really important save. So, yeah, we were lucky in that
We,
in that instance not to go in 2-0 down.
Yeah, we definitely were, and I mean, you touch on Bryn there. One thing that is sometimes a rarity, I suppose, and especially considering the spotlight that's been on the goalkeeper position. We've conceded 3 goals yesterday, and I don't think he can do anything about. There is literally nothing he can do about any of the 3 of them. I think that's a given. He does well to keep, as you say, it's a fantastic save to keep Plymouth just at 1-up rather than going into the break 2 down, and it's a bad thing to say and it's a bad trait to have, but given what we saw at Oxford, and of course it was a lot later on in the half, even when Plymouth went in front, I didn't think, well, that's game over. Because with this Middlesbrough side, as many of the holes that it has in it and as many of the bad traits, you always think they'll score. They'll score in this game. And yeah, we did do that in the second half. I mean, initially, just in terms of kind of themes of the first half and going into the second half, even up until we get the equaliser. Look, we will touch on him individually. Neto Borges, I saw it described as a Lucas Engel at Sheffield Wednesday type performance. I don't know if it was that bad, but it was probably close. I've seen a lot of comments about both fullbacks. I actually thought on the day that Dijksteel was okay, to be honest. By all means, doesn't cover himself in glory for the first. For the third goal, I actually think that it's probably a bigger point about how little support that the fullbacks are getting from the wingers and the rest of the team. I think, look, I don't think, and it may have been this, I don't think it should make so much of a huge kind of difference across the whole of the back four if one of the defenders has a really shaky game. But it did feel like Edmondson's kind of lack of reliability, specifically in yesterday's game, because he made a few errors. He was getting caught on the ball. He played a few really dodgy passes. And I don't know if that just unsettled his other defenders in the team. I don't know if it just rubs off and kind of they were all a little bit kind of thinking, what do we do here? But all afternoon, even though, as you say, going into the second half, we got the equaliser and attacked in an okay fashion, all afternoon you felt Middlesbrough will score, but also they're probably going to concede as well. And I mean, that's ultimately what it became, the game as a whole, didn't it?
Yeah, the basketball game happened in the second half, didn't it? We came out after half time, the team that needed to get back into the game, and it was shown in our urgency trying to get back into the game. Obviously, we have the corner, it's put in and cleared away. McGree out to Dork. He actually, for one of the first times yesterday, stood up his man, and as we've seen in his early Middlesbrough career, standing up a fullback, gets it to a standing start, knocks the ball to the byline, delivers the cross, and it's sort of ricocheted away. And look, it doesn't matter how they're going at this point, but Howson strikes the ball goalwards, and it takes a big deflection off a Plymouth player and goes in the corner. It honestly doesn't matter how they're going when you're in a game like we were yesterday. Yeah, get yourself back level. And at that point, you're hoping, right, well, hopefully they've had the rollicking at half time that they needed to have. And that'll be sort of Boro clicked back into gear. We're back in the game. Hopefully, this is the time where we kick on. And maybe this is a case of us being comfortable in the instance of being back in back in the game, or Plymouth just coming back and thinking, right, well, they've hit us with a punch, so we need to counter that. And yeah, within, I don't even know, a couple of minutes, it felt like they were back ahead.
Yeah. And do you know what? Even before they regained the lead, Middlesbrough have two golden opportunities to take the lead. Firstly, Doak goes almost one-on-one. It becomes almost a two-on-one situation. I think it's Gibson which is making the recovery run. And like I say, Doak is kind of just dilly-dallying, really. He's in two minds. He doesn't know if he should go himself. He doesn't know if he should try and wait and then just slip. I think it's Conway in. And in the end, he kind of does neither. And as you say, it was so frustrating yesterday because the one moment that over the last few weeks that we've seen of Ben Doak in terms of just going back to why everyone fell in love with Ben Doak. And look, it's not been a huge, absolute fall off a cliff in terms of Ben Doak's form, but I think there has been a noticeable sort of change in the last few weeks in terms of, as I say, additional kind of awareness from defenders about what he is about and what his game is. But also, I don't know if Ben Doak is, as and understandably so, kind of the first time in his career struggling to adapt to that a little bit. He often cuts in now. He'll not kind of face up his defender and just knock and go. He will, come inside on his left foot. And as much as Ben Doak has loads and loads of quality, I do think that we're at the stage now where potentially this is where, in terms of when Michael Carrick always talks about the squad, in terms of Ben Doak's stage of his career and being a lone player, this is sometimes where I think Doak would possibly benefit from having maybe it's just a game or two on the sidelines and then being able to make an impact again from the bench. But unfortunately, Middlesbrough's lack of options on the right wing doesn't allow them to do that. And I think that speaks volumes, to be honest, for where Isaiah Jones ranks in Michael Carrick's kind of idea of his Middlesbrough squad. Look, we saw again reports this week that Isaiah Jones is looking to leave Middlesbrough in January. I think it's one of them, just briefly touching on it. The fact he can't get on yesterday, the fact that he only had a minute in the game prior, I think now it's one of those things where it's got to the stage where it's just going to be best for both parties.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's been brewing for quite a while, really, with Jones. We sort of had the conversation, I think it was at the start of last season, about his future. Obviously, didn't play too much of a part in the playoff season, Carrick's first season, because of certain things that were going on in his personal life that we didn't know about at the time. And yeah, we weren't sure what was going to happen. Obviously, last season he had a couple of injury problems, but in his time in the team, contributed pretty well. If you look at his overall stats for goals and assists, but this season, it was always clear that right side was going to be a position that we look to strengthen, especially after our early transfer dealings. You could sort of see that the obvious gap was for the right side, and Ben Doak's filled in perfectly, really, for the system that we want to play. I think that my overall view on the sort of problems within this team, and it goes back even before Michael Carrick to Chris Wilder's team, with the three at the back and the wing backs and the reliance on your outlets out wide. In the 21-22 season, you saw Jones have his breakthrough season where it was literally, we are going to work the ball out to Jones at every single opportunity.
Time and time and time again.
Time and time again, we'll move it left with no intention of going down the left. And the idea is isolate that right side. Totally fine. And it worked a treat until the last 2 months of the season when teams started doubling and tripling up on him, and Middlesbrough had nothing. And okay, there were certain things that made you fall out the playoffs in that season. The manager wanting to leave being one of those things, but that sort of continued since, apart from Ryan Giles being down the left hand side, and you had Force and okay Jones to an extent in the playoff season. So that was the last season, 2 seasons ago, where we had balance down both sides, where you have outlets down both sides that are proficient going forward and delivering crosses into the box or shots. And now at the minute, and I think this is where it's sort of
I think the key thing that you said, sorry to butt in here, Nathan, but the main thing about that is we possibly were a little bit one-dimensional, but we had a balance. That system worked for
yeah
each of the cogs in that team. It worked, and almost I feel like now, and it's almost like do we have to talk about this again? But ever since that, it feels like we've tried every variation to almost try and replicate it, and we just can't find any form of balance.
yeah and that with that becomes your over reliance on well spreading the ball out to the right hand side and at pretty much every opportunity trying to feed it to your right winger. And with that, the burden weighs heavy if you're the creative player down that side that has to produce week in, week out for this team to be successful. Because down the left hand side, we don't have anything really. And look, this is going to come across pretty harsh because I don't necessarily think that it's Borges' fault. I think that he's been profiled possibly a little bit wrong. I think that if you got to play this sort of inverted left side player with McGree yesterday, you double tens with your left back providing the width. They have to provide some sort of attacking ability down that side, and Borges doesn't have that. Now, what I will say that will sort of caveat that point is the recruitment team brought in Delano Bergzorg in the summer, who's a different profile on that left hand side, a player that will hug the touchline and drive inside. Now that sort of nullifies your left back problem a little bit because Bergzorg is then okay, he drifts inside at times, but he's your outlet that can sometimes go up the line, will sometimes cut inside and get shots off. And in the last couple of weeks, Bergzorg has made an impact. There's no doubt about that. He has been the man on that left side that I felt more comfortable as a fan watching this Boro team in when he's on the pitch in that left hand side role because he's providing something. Whether that's every time he gets the ball, it's not. But he's a maverick. He can create something out of nothing. And at the minute, He's played himself into the team. And yesterday, okay, I understand the squad. You need to rotate different things. McGree again yesterday, limited impact on the game again. And look, I know this is sort of jumping way ahead, but I think that we are seeing, or we will see, a slight transition with the left side. I think we'll see a more withdrawn left back that's going to just sit in and be a left back, an out and out left back in a four. And I think we're going to go for a winger on the side. The links to Barry tell me that. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting point because even in terms of an attacking, we've kind of transitioned across the pitch from Doak to Riley McGree and Bergsorg and Borges. And yesterday there was so many I think both flanks were really the story of yesterday. I must say, Finazar's really quiet yesterday. In terms of Finazar as a player, we've seen what he can do. We all know of the quality he possesses. I think he's one of those players where he probably throughout the season will have purple patches. He might have games where he doesn't really do anything. In fairness to him, in terms of a number 10, he done nothing last week, but he gets an assist that wins you the game. And sometimes you almost accept games like yesterday because of games like the week prior where he just gives you that one moment of quality. So that for me, not necessarily a problem area. I think you look at both fullback areas, and to be honest, Dijksteel doesn't really bother me. As I say, he's certainly not the best right back in the division, but I think he is.
He's competent enough.
He's competent. He does a job. He's by no means going to win himself a place in the AFL team of the season, but he does a job. I think the main thing, and I've been reluctant to say it for a long time, and by all means, I don't think the system helps him at all. But I go back to Borges and I just think, I'm not sure really, like you've just touched on, if he offers you anything at all going forward. But then, and there shouldn't be so much of a kind of, well, if he can't do one thing as good, he must excel in another area of his game. Sorry, I don't think Borges really excels at anything, to be honest. I'm kind of, like you say, in terms of profiling of the left back that Michael Carrick wanted, the profiling of what our formation requires from a left back, I don't really know. I'm just yet to see it. I think there was almost like the kind of anticipation from everything you read from people that had seen a lot more of Borges than what we had when he signed, was that, yes, he probably won't give you as much going forward, but defensively, I think he was amongst one of the best fullbacks in Ligue 1 the season before we signed him, and that's when we had eyes on him. From what I can see of Borges, he massively struggles. I think, to be honest, now, if you watch teams attacking against us, and we talked about kind of isolating the right-hand side, he looks, for me now, whenever we are attacked by teams, the obvious target of give your ball to the right winger or get your right winger in behind, because he doesn't know how to deal with it. You've seen it with Dan James, who, in fairness, one of the best right wingers in the division. But Bundu yesterday, yeah, he's a handful and he's quick, but he gave him an absolute torrid afternoon. And it almost, there's other positions in the team which could be improved on. We're a championship side with some real standout kind of individuals and some players that'll go on and play in the Premier League. But for me, in terms of going into January, if someone said, you're only allowed to sign one player, one position, and I know Lucas Engels backing in amongst it or back on the grass or whatever kind of Michael Carrick, the way he describes things, left back is a serious problem position for this Middlesbrough side. And it's, regardless of the characteristics, we do have a little bit of a soft centre. We are liable to have a mad 5 minutes and cost ourselves a game. But that is becoming ever increasingly the area of this Middlesbrough side where it's obvious majority, if not kind of probably 80 to 90% of Plymouth's attacks yesterday come from that side.
Yeah, I suppose that is correct. And it's been a problem for a while. As you mentioned, the Leeds game attacked us down that side very heavily. And yesterday, the second goal, as Mumba just plays the ball up the channel to Bundu, who's made a run. Now, yeah, Borges is in no man's land at that point because he's not tracking the winger. He's flat-footed. He doesn't know whether to sort of charge at Mumba and get towards the ball or track the run, and does neither in the end. This is the same goal that we conceded at Ellen Road 2 weeks ago, where he's flat-footed. He doesn't know what to do in terms of get to the ball or track the man. Does neither, and the right winger gets a free delivery into the box And yeah, it's an easy goal in the end. I suppose Edmondson, look,
Yeah,
I'm with the
Edmondson
point.
slips, doesn't he? Yeah.
Edmondson slips. He's trying to cover that run from Bundu. Okay, it's a little bit frustrating that that happens and Bundu's able to get onto the ball and be able to even pick his head up and literally pick out a man. And yeah, he actually his delivery in between Vandenberg and Howson to Giebi, who's free and arriving late. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's a good finish from him, in fairness. Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, really. And then yeah, we end up getting ourselves back into the game. This was when the cavalry came on.
Yeah.
Della, Latilath. Who else was it? Barlassa at the same time?
Yeah, I believe so. But again, look, I know we touched on it last podcast. He's being reactive instead of proactive again. Make the subs. As much as I love Tommy Conway, and to be fair, he puts one on a plate for Hackney on the afternoon, and he scores one himself when he's marginally offside. But something needed to kind of freshen things up again. We had the moment, we'd done the hard part, we got back into the game, and then it did go a little bit kind of like we just needed something. We needed a little bit more impetus or a little bit more quality. Just to again, as you say, McGree, to be honest, largely ineffective yesterday. And even if he just put Bergsorg onto the pitch, and to be honest, he's involved in the equaliser. But again, subs just too late.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Or not necessarily too late because ultimately they have an impact. But could he do it earlier? Is my point.
Could he do it earlier at 1-1 rather than at
Could
2-1?
he be more brave? Exactly.
Yeah, go and win the game. When look, I'm watching it and we can see it's not working. Surely he can see it's not working, and the coaching staff. Conway, I suppose, with him, you have someone there who's a natural finisher. If you do create a chance, the
Yeah.
likelihood is he's hitting the target. So I can understand keeping him on. But McGree and the double tens with the left back. Look, you've heard my thoughts on it a moment ago. I'd have had Bergsorg on. He's got me feeling a lot more comfortable when he's on the pitch at the minute. Which look, it's frightening that in the space of 6 or 7 weeks, Delano Bergsorg is now for me the man on the left hand side for Boro.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah,
I hate to go just finishing kind of up on that point, and we'll probably go back to it to be honest, because it's the same theme that gets Plymouth their third goal. But it does make me laugh a little bit. And I hate to be the boring one to go back to it, but you have all the kind of critics of Ryan Giles when he was here in terms of, well, he can't defend. He can attack, but he can't defend. Well, McGree was playing the exact same role in that team, more or less, for a lot of the season. And I know obviously Ramsey come in towards the back end of that season and it slightly changed things round. McGree was playing off the right, but you know, it just makes me laugh. Giles can't defend, but he seemed to do all right that season.
yeah.
Inarguably the same system.
Yeah, do you want to know what? I'd seen a lot of discourse about this last night, and I'm in two minds now to a point. I think he's the only man that we've seen in this system out of five left backs now that has looked at home doing that that role on the left hand side, holding the width and delivering good quality crosses into the box time and time again. He finished with 12 assists in that season, and it could have and should have been more. What people have been saying is he only got 2 assists post Christmas from that season, which granted he did, but we did have massive, massive chances. And I'm not, look, they're in my head, but I'm not going to reel them off because who cares? But yeah, I think obviously your point would be Bangura looks to be the man in the current
Yeah.
squad that would fit that role, probably the best out of the three that we have available. But injuries have played a massive part, and unfortunately, Bangura has not been available.
What? Yeah, I mean, just kind of again, I hate doing it. I hate kind of bashing or singling out one individual, but I think it speaks volumes, the fact that the most excited I've been in terms of injury news this season is the fact that Lucas Engel's back on the grass. I mean, really, who would have thought?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure what January will bring, but there was some murmurs about Engel's future in the summer as well. That was obviously just before Borges came into the side. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see how things go in the January transfer window. Yeah, it's definitely a problem position that played a part yesterday and has done in the last couple of weeks. Hopefully, it's not too damaging in the next couple of weeks, which will be massive for us. But look, we found ourselves back into the game with Hackney after the subs were made. It's a bit fortunate how it happens. At that point, to reiterate, you're 2-2, you've made your subs, you're looking at the team thinking, you're back in it now. You've got 15 minutes to find a winner. Come on. Like, come on.
And also at that point, you knew that there was about to be about 9 or 10 minutes of added
Yeah,
time as well.
yeah. Obviously, HYDE went off injured in the second half. So you're thinking, right, the time is now. And then no one decides to close down Ogbeta at left back. And he whips in a Ryan Giles-esque delivery across the face of goal. Defenders in no man's land can't do anything with that delivery. If you throw a leg at it, the likelihood is you're putting it in the back of your own net, and Bundu around the back just taps in, and you're 3-2 down for the third time in the game, and I'm sat there at home thinking, for Christ's sake, this isn't our afternoon at all.
Yeah, it was one of those where throughout the game, as I say, it was a weird feeling because you always felt like Middlesbrough could concede a goal, but in the same breath, you always felt like we probably will get back into this as well. And I think a draw is probably ultimately the fairest result. Look, if we play an extra 10 minutes, maybe Boro go on and win the game. But in the same breath, maybe we go and just let the fullback of or the winger of Plymouth, whichever side, go and cross a ball in and we concede again. I think in this instance, we see, in fairness, Dijksteel, who I thought probably, as I said earlier in the podcast, come out with a little bit of credit yesterday. He's doing the job of two men. Doak is not giving him any assistance at all. The cross comes in, and I mean, Bundu had an absolute field day all afternoon. It was just the kind of icing or the cherry on top of the icing of his performance, in the sense of, well, he's been allowed to do whatever he wants and put numerous crosses into the box. So it's only fair that he's allowed to just run ghosty in at the back post and stick one in and get himself on the score sheet as well. Again, just not goals that you can absolutely kind of analyze to the nth degree. It's just bad defending. Basics of get out to the person crossing the ball, your winger help your fullback out, be aware of what's behind you. Don't let your winger or your man as a fullback, don't be in a body position where you're so fixated on what's coming from that direction that you don't see what's coming from that direction. It's so disappointing because, as we've said, Middlesbrough scored 3 goals in a game again. You can't consistently score 3-4, and it's not been the case. It's not like we're doing this every game, but Middlesbrough shouldn't have to score 3 goals to guarantee a win. It really shouldn't be the case. We saw it at Norwich, and yes, okay, it's not like we kept on going behind and coming back. That we just capitulated, didn't we, really? But to score even once in a season, to score 3 goals and come away with only a point is a disappointment. To do it numerous times is just unforgivable. And yeah, look, we ultimately find the equaliser again. Corner comes in, Rav gets the highest, and Latilaf sticks it in. Good finish first time on the volley. And even then, you still had time, and you thought, yeah, we might take the lead in the game for the first time. But of course, that's not the case. I think just in general, I mean, we spoke about it. We touched on it last week. At the moment, it seems like, unfortunately for Middlesbrough, those kind of 3 or 4 teams at the top of the division just can't lose. And if you're dropping points at the moment, and there'll be a time that comes where they will slow down and Middlesbrough have a good run of form. It's the way that the championship goes. But I think at the moment it's frustrating because it goes back to, again, you look at the squad, you look at yesterday's matchday squad, realistically, in terms of like genuine people that would be available in that starting 11 who you'd say would be bankers to start in the game. Aidan Morris is the only one missing yesterday. And that, to go to bottom of the league, and okay, yes, we've touched on it already. Other teams in similar positions, even higher than us in the division, have done that. But up until yesterday, they were amongst, or I think they may have been the lowest scoring team in the division, and we've let them score 3. I mean, talk about typical Boro, whatever you like. It seems like there is 100% evidence to suggest, and I think there already was, but this Middlesbrough side, whether it's age, whether it's lack of experience, whether it's just the way that it's set up in terms of its formation, and perhaps sometimes I think Carrick's a little bit guilty of being a bit stubborn and not changing things, and especially in game management. But is it a case of just, yeah, this Middlesbrough side has got a soft centre and it's just going to be the repeat of, we'll tonk a few teams throughout the season, then we'll have games like today, we'll have games, it's like you've got a selection of 1 of 3 games as a Middlesbrough fan this season. You either stick 7 past someone, you create loads and then give the opposition a goal at home and they go and take the points, or you score 3 goals and then also actually you kind of just give them 3 free goals as well. It's like, it's a little bit tedious. It's rinse and repeat. And to be honest, look, I think we touched on it last week. I don't want to go back into it. There was a little bit of revisionism. It annoyed me that so many, after the Leeds performance especially, were so kind of like, oh, well, the automatic promotion was never something that we could achieve. It was a complete pipe dream. I don't think that was the case at the beginning of the season. I think it definitely is now. And Middlesbrough are in a position where they're in a fight, and they will be. I think, to be honest, I'm still pretty confident that they will get in there. And there's a long time to go. We might make additions in January that completely kind of change the whole outlook and the makeup of the squad. And we might lose players as well. I mean, laugh. His agent's working overtime. He's doing God knows what. It's almost like an interview a day at the moment, just to kind of get his man in the headlines. But that's to be expected now. But we might lose certain players and have the challenge of reinvesting that. But I think it's a difficult one because I don't want to seem too downbeat about things. We're still in and amongst the playoff positions, but it's almost like an acceptance now of it's playoffs at best. And although Middlesbrough have an awful lot of quality in this squad, there's a little bit of a makeup, a lot of traits that are just not desirable in a team that you want to be in the higher end of the championship.
Yeah, the sort of, when we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, that the thing you need in this division to be successful is consistency, and that's from your sort of starting 11 to your performance level, and then obviously with those they herald results in the end. And at the minute, we're not consistent enough to be anywhere near the top 2 conversation. Do I think that we've got the players to be able to do that? Yes. Do I think that we've got the manager to be able to do that? Yes. Have I seen it before in snippets where Boro teams of different iterations over the last 2.5 seasons of Michael Carrick's tenure as boss have gone on runs in which they've strung wins together for 6, 7 games, yes, I think that these players can do that as well. But it's a case of cutting out mistakes and I think working more as a defensive unit, supporting each other down the flanks. You boys in the middle of the pitch supporting each other and staying compact enough where if one loses possession of the football, then the other team aren't just breaking on your back two, really, because our fullbacks are pretty high. Yeah, I think that we do have ability to be able to do it, but it's about putting it into practice.
Yeah,
And this team has proven, unfortunately, in the first 4 months of the season that games like yesterday creep in all too much for us against teams that you'd expect to be able to go to and your quality shine through. And we throw in a first half performance like yesterday, and you're already on the back foot at 1-0 down, and then moments when you get yourself back into the game and you perhaps have the players' mentality that look, I'm not saying that they do think this way, but thinking, all right, well, we're back into it, so we'll just comfortably win this now. It's not how it works. Plymouth have been right under it for weeks, lost a good few games on the bounce, went to Sheffield United last week, and okay, they got beat against the team that are top of the league and on track for 100 points, but they put in a really good performance. The fan base were buoyed off it, and we're going there and sort of, I don't know what they're expecting, that their fans aren't going to be with them and that the team aren't going to come flying out to try and get into the lead. Okay, they started relatively slow in the opening 10 minutes, but we didn't start necessarily really quick like Leeds do, where they blow teams away in the first 15, 20 minutes. And all of a sudden a team's got to come out and then you can just pick them off. We don't do that. Never seen it so far from this Boro team this season. We don't start quick enough, and it's incredibly frustrating. But yeah, we've got a good few games now to give it a real good go over the Christmas period. And look, there's teams behind us that lost games yesterday. Obviously, you mentioned that the top four, which at the minute are relentless. We need to start just being more consistent with everything, I suppose. It can't be a case of one game being, yeah, this is us. And then the players get like, I don't know, inflated egos and think, yeah, we are the real deal, and then throw in a performance like yesterday.
yeah. Do you think just in terms of that word consistency, and it's we mentioned it an awful lot last season as well, and we couldn't find any, and that was largely through kind of matters out of Michael Carrick's control. There was a lot of injuries, so he couldn't possibly field a consistent starting team. Do you think that almost this season there is a good championship level player or potentially a really good championship level player in almost every position? And you look at the starting 11 and really in terms of if everyone's fit, and obviously that's very rarely going to be the case, but who actually is a nailed on starter in this Middlesbrough side? Because the goalkeeper has been chopped and changed. Right back has been chopped and changed. Okay, admittedly, injuries do play a part, but the centre half partnership has been, there's probably been 5 different variations of that. Ironically enough, the left back has been kind of the only constant sort of stay in that position. And that, I mean, in fairness, again, is more so down to injuries. Midfield, possibly a little bit in terms of the centre halves. You know, over the last few weeks, especially, we've seen that chop and change a little bit. But in fairness, up until Morris's injury, it was Hackney and Morris. That was fine. Azaz is set. On the left, it seems to change on a weekly basis. On the right, Doak, okay, is kind of nailed down that spot. But then at the moment now where we need, or we don't necessarily need, but I think it would be beneficial for Ben Doak to just have a little bit of a rest. I'm not saying drop him. I'm just saying give him a rest. And then up top, sometimes you think, actually, it's a really good thing that we've got two fantastic options. And, one comes in, scores last week, one then drops to the bench, comes on again, scores yesterday, and Tommy Conway and Lati Laffer kind of in and out the team. Is that a bigger issue than perhaps what we've all given it thought? We don't really have, other than 3 positions, have I said there? We don't really actually have any consistency in terms of the starting team either.
Which is like, I understand your point, but it is then down to
The
both
players
players.
themselves have to play themselves into a position where they
Yeah,
can't be dropped.
yeah,
But, like the striker, like Bergsorg, following on from the Millwall game, Delano Bergsorg, dead on his feet. And I know there's bucket loads of football coming up, but we, many other fans, all agreed that it was probably Bergsorg's one of his best performances in Middlesbrough shirt last week. Then Riley McGree comes into the team.
yeah,
And yeah, okay, Riley McGree, great footballer, love him to pieces. I know he splits opinion sometimes, and I'm starting to see a little bit of a kind of turning of an opinion, purely based off social media, which is always a dangerous game in terms of how I guess the whole kind of world or fan base or whatever kind of context you put around judging social media for a view on one thing. But is there a reason to take Bergsorg out of the team? Latilaf scores last week. Yeah, okay, Conway, brilliant. And we've had success largely whenever one player or one striker's come out of the team, the following week, another striker's then scored. But Latilaf scores last week. His agents come out and made stupid comments. Perhaps that's got some kind of involvement in the decision for him to come out of the team, but he scored. Why then take him out of the team? And it's like, it's such a positive in one sense, and it's like almost the old cliche of, oh well, it's a headache that the manager will enjoy because he's got so many good players that he can pick from. But I don't know, sometimes I think I'm just looking into every kind of element of the squad, in the team, of the result, and trying to pin it down to one reason as to why we are so inconsistent. Because as you say, you don't know, you turn up at a Middlesbrough game each week and you just don't know what variation of it's going to be.
yeah, yeah. It does change a whole lot from week to week. And look, there's instances when it can be beneficial when you've got a 3 game week. They've just had a week off without a game ahead of Plymouth. And granted, we play Boxing Day now, which is again 5 days. Surely 5 days is enough for rest and recuperation. Okay, then you get to the point where you're playing 26th, 29th, 1st, 4th. So, okay, if you're seeing rotation there, fine, I understand it because it's 4 games in the space of, I don't know, a week or so. So, yeah, you could understand it there, but yeah, I wasn't necessarily sure that yesterday was the game for McGree. I thought that Bergsorg, in the end, when you see how open the game was, that is the game for him. And in that case, why wasn't the substitution made before it was? But look, at the end of the day, it's a point on the road away at a ground that is difficult to pick up points, as proven by their record there this season. Sunderland got beat there, Blackburn got beat there. There's only 2 sides that won there, and they're smack bang in the middle of the table, ironically. Um,
Yeah, it's me getting worked up, and actually, if you look at it like that, it's a good point.
good
No, I
point.
mean, look, you've got to look at it in terms of your own kind of context and what's going on around players' performances. You can't just kind of base results off that. But look, as you say, I think the next period of games, and Christmas is a weird one because other than the playoff season that you touched on with the likes of Archer, Giles, all them lot, I can't really remember Middlesbrough. Oh, actually, funnily enough, Jonathan Woodgate's Middlesbrough. I can't really remember Middlesbrough ever having a really great Christmas period other than those two. However, I look at the fixtures coming up, and like everything in the Championship, you've kind of got to take almost the rough with the smooth. The games that look on the eye like winnable fixtures or games that might suit your team or squad, with the fact that the likes of Sheffield Wednesday coming to town absolutely on a roll, pardon the pun, at the moment. Burnley, since that draw with Middlesbrough, have kind of, well, their consistency hasn't really slowed down either. And then you go towards the two games after that, Hull, Cardiff. It's two games where actually you, strangely enough, you're more worried playing those teams than what you are Sheffield Wednesday and Burnley. It's just, please someone make it make sense for my own sanity. But again, it feels like a group of games over the festive period where you look at it and you think, okay, two teams are going to come to the Riverside. Middlesbrough, in fairness, one thing that has been quite consistent, dare I say it, under Carrick, and even last season is usually they do pretty well at getting themselves up for the big occasions. And Boxing Day sellout, it's a big occasion. Burnley, great position in the league. As I say, good consistency. We've played them not so long ago, and everyone kind of, if we hadn't have played Leeds afterwards, everyone would have went, yeah, good point. So again, big occasion. And then you look at what a mess Hull have been this season. Yes, okay, they've got the new manager, but they are, from everything that I've seen, they're not a good side. And Cardiff, back at the Riverside, have been a bizarre team this season to watch, and not a very good one at that. You look at those games and you think, actually, there's a real opportunity there to kind of put a nice run together over Christmas, build up a bit of momentum. But then, as I say, you just don't know what you're going to get.
You don't, yeah. The rotation in the squad will play a part.
Maybe the rotation will come into its own. Maybe this is the perfect chance for that rotation to be used as a positive. I don't know, Nathan. I'm clutching at straws a little bit.
Yeah, but as you say, Sheffield Wednesday doing really well at the moment. A couple of points behind us in the table. I think they're just outside the playoffs now, ninth place in the division. Okay, they had the rumours in the week about Danny Roll leaving to various different jobs, Southampton and Hamburg as well. But it looks like he's set to stay. He said his journey at Sheffield Wednesday isn't complete yet. A difficult opportunity.
And I know it sounds silly as well, but him coming out and being so buoyant and being so the exact opposite of Chris Wilder when he got linked with a job will only galvanise them even more.
100%, yeah. It'll give the players a hell of a lot of confidence in themselves. Really looking forward to it. Boxing Day at the Riverside's always a fantastic occasion. It is a period where there is a hell of a lot of games that throws up some weird results this time of year. It really, really does. And that's not me just saying it. You can point to loads over the last couple of years where you'll look at Boxing Day games in the Championship and think, how's that even happened? And it's just the nature of the beast playing in the Championship and playing relentless games in the space of a couple of days. So hopefully Boro come out of this run with a nice bucket full of points and have a free week at the start of January to sort of reconvene, reflect, with 2 weeks off the Championship before having to go again. This is it now. This is crunch time to pick up a good number of points before a little mini break from the Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows? I mean, early doors by all means, but by that Cardiff game, we might have a new left winger. As of this evening, Louis Barry, of course, heavily linked with Middlesbrough, has been recalled or is due to be recalled by Aston Villa. That's an official kind of confirmed thing now. So look, that may well happen. It might be a Cameron Archer situation where it's already done and dusted. I'd like to think, because of the absolute monster that we've given them in Morgan Rogers, that they actually owe us one. So who knows? But yeah, look, it's as much as this has been frustrating, and it probably seems like, it's only a point. There's no need to be that downbeat about it. I still look at the next run of 4 or 5 games, and I never ever really go into a game thinking we'll get beat. I always go in with the mindset of we can win the game, and that is, look, it's almost like a one of them where teams lower down the division probably think, God, I wish we had that, but it's so frustrating because I still feel that. And I think Johnny Howson done an interview this week as well, where he said, yeah, we're in the top 6 and it's okay. And it's all well and good being there, but we as a squad still feel like we can achieve far more. And look, points wise, I think the opportunity to do that is probably gone now. But I think one thing we have learned is, and by all means, look, it's not a set in stone thing that we're going to even get in the playoffs, but you've got to find those runs of form, and especially going into the playoffs. Don't just kind of settle for getting into the playoffs and then take a backseat, because that's the worst thing you can possibly do. Trying to get yourself back in the mode of, right, we need to switch it on again now, as we've just, let's not go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, Nathan, as kind of up and down as what this podcast has been, just like the Plymouth game, of course, I think now in terms of scheduling wise from the podcast, we're probably going to have a little bit of a break and probably reconvene before Blackburn. And I mean, that podcast is going to be an absolute monster because we're going to have
4 games.
four games to talk about and potentially some January activity. Who knows? But I mean, firstly, I just want to say I hope everyone has an absolutely lovely Christmas and a great new year. But as a kind of, because of where we're going to leave it in 2024, as a year of reflection in terms of where Middlesbrough were going into 2024 as to how they're probably going to end it, how do you reflect on this year?
Well, yeah, we're in a Carabao Cup semi-final, and yeah, obviously that night at the Riverside in January was absolutely top notch. Yeah, that I think that'll be the standout of the year. Going away to top of the league, Leicester as well, winning there after being doom and gloom in the week after being beat at Preston. Shitloads of injuries, like loads and loads of injuries.
Far too many.
Far too many injuries. Lat's run of scoring 12 in 13 at the back end of last season. Being
His
managed,
agent doing 12 articles in 13 days of saying how many clubs want to sign him.
yeah, I've never seen a championship player's agent spout more rubbish into the press than him. It's incredible. But yeah, there's been plenty of positives so far this season. Just yeah, personally, loved coming on here every week, still talking about this mob as much as they are frustrating. They do have weeks where they score 4, 5, and 6 in back-to-back games as well. So yeah, they're a funny bunch, but yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't have it any other way. I totally would have it a different way. I'd just prefer it if we came on here and win every week. But then again, that wouldn't be too fun just having all the highs of football. You do have to have the lows to make the highs feel a little bit better. So hopefully now after our 3-3 draw at bottom of the league, we pick 12 out of 12 points up over the Christmas and New Year period.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to be honest, you've picked out a few highlights for me there. I think undoubtedly for me, it's got to be that Chelsea game. And look, it seems so funny now, and especially kind of where Chelsea find themselves now in terms of even the change that they've gone through. But, Cole Palmer was just starting to come into his own, and Poch as manager, kind of ironically enough, beating Maresca at Leicester. You touched on that as well, and obviously we know now that he's the manager there. But yeah, I think that's the obvious standout, isn't it? I don't think anyone by any means kind of give us absolutely no chance at all, but it was an injury-plagued side, and it was just one of those nights at the other side, wasn't it? Cole Palmer missed 2 sitters, and that Hayden Hackney moment, look, it's although in the grand scheme of things, it meant absolutely zilch, I'm still, and I stick by, I think I said it in the podcast after, when the draw was first made, I thought, oh, well, if we could go to Stamford Bridge and then get them back at the other side, we might be able to do the unthinkable. I'm glad it happened the way it did, because we got that night and we got that kind of post-match euphoria of thinking, oh my God, we're going to Stamford Bridge with a lead. What could we possibly do? I mean, let's not talk about what actually happened in the return leg, but yeah, even kind of the 10 minutes before kickoff, I remember you calling me I don't know if you were in a bar or whatever with your brother and his mates, and saying, I've already warned them, and for anyone that's listening, Nathan's got a younger brother, and not by a lot, but Nathan's got that older brother syndrome of I've known Boro longer than you. I know exactly what's coming. Don't get yourselves into the false sense of security that we might go and actually do the unthinkable here. And you were right on that occasion, weren't you? There was a lot of people like kind of getting themselves in the mind frame of, oh my God, we might actually kind of go there, get the first 15, 20 minutes out the way, make it ugly, and Stamford Bridge will turn. There was the problems with the ownership and all that. Yeah, I think Cole Palmer had about 7 by the time it was like 25 minutes in. But listen, it was it didn't make that night at the other side any less special. And as you say, coming on here, you wouldn't have it any other way, would you? It would get it. I mean, to be fair, we've got a pretty good kind of example of when we were just winning every week. And actually, I quite enjoyed coming on the podcast and just sitting back in this chair and going, tell you what, we're half decent, aren't we? Chuba's scored another 4. Giles has got another 3 assists. It's not a bad problem. I can think of worse things to be coming on the podcast and talking about. But yeah, look, it'll be the same again next year. Playoffs again. I don't know if I can do with it again, to be honest, Nathan.
Yeah, it'll be right. It'll be right. We'll be fine. I think we have got a run in us where I think in this second half of the season, we'll have a run in us where we win a good few on the bounce. And we'll see where that takes us. There's no doubt that that there's a couple of teams in that top 4 where I think that they will falter a little bit. I think that the resolve of teams in and around us will be tested for a couple of their players, as well as us, like 100% as well as us. And look, that could flip the championship around for you, the January transfer window, whether that's players going or the business of clubs and being able to bring in a couple of difference makers in January. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but we're in a good position. We're going into Christmas inside the playoff places, and as mentioned, 4 massive games before we reconvene on the Boropolis podcast. Yeah, it'll be a big one over Christmas and New Year. Hope everyone has a fantastic one. Loads of beers, loads of food, and hopefully a bucket load of Boro wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Just finally, Nathan, how many nights in stack have you got planned over the festive period?
I'll be there Boxing Day. I'll see everyone there after we Chef Wed.
I really hope so. Yeah, like Nathan, look, I've already said, I hope everyone has a really lovely, beer, food filled Christmas and New Year. I hope for everyone that the New Year in general and Middlesbrough is as luck filled, as joy filled, as just, I hope everyone has a good year that listens to this podcast, and everyone in general. Look, I've said on this podcast, we had it a few weeks ago, it's been a really shit year at times for myself. And look, everyone else has got their own things. going on as well. There's challenges that life throw up at you, but yeah, sometimes we talk about consistency. This is the one consistent, talking about this mob, like you put it. So yeah, it's always a nice escape, and hopefully in terms of that escape, we just have lots of good football and points to talk about in 2025. So yeah, once again, thank you ever so much for all your support over the course of the year and all your likes, retweets, follows, everything like that. From myself and Nathan, a huge thank you as always. And yes, please do, as I always say, like and subscribe if you do enjoy the Boropolis podcast. Audio platforms, as always, again, please do rate and review. And yeah, thank you ever so much for everyone that has tuned in this year. That has been the last Boropolis podcast of 2024. Thanks everyone so much for all your support this year, and we will see you again in 2025.